Everybody, and welcome to part 3 of the Gentle Glen Park playthrough. So in the last episode, we added in quite a few more rides, including a Virginia reel, a water slide, of which we moved the pirate ship next to form a bit of a small water park area, and then we added in a couple rides near the top of the hill to expand the forest area, including a Dodgem Cars and a car ride. That kind of weaved in and out of the side friction coaster, which we built back in the first part of the series. And it also sneaks back around and behind some other rides as well. We also added a new Ferris wheel in place of the relocated pirate ship. In terms of the objective, we're doing pretty alright with about 900 guests out of the 1200 required, and finances are also looking pretty good. I am charging quite high ride ticket prices basically all throughout the park, so yeah, I haven't had too much trouble with finances here. And since the park's also quite small, it means that coaster sizes and the amount of landscaping and scenery added, even with the amount I add, it hasn't really meant that it's eaten too much into the finances. Anyway, with that, it's about time that I went back and spent some time on the other side of the park, which was looking a bit sparse. And I may have mentioned earlier that I was planning to turn this side of the map into a kind of jungle, or actually more of a haunted swamp area, actually. So that was pretty much the first thing I worked on. I first added a path to complete the loop around the entire island. I extended out the land a little bit so it wasn't entirely above water, just next to the side friction coaster there. I made it the ash black path, as I thought it's a good choice with this sort of I think it brings out the haunted feels of the theme. I then added in a haunted house to really drive home the point that this is intended to be a haunted swamp area. Added in a couple little bits of vegetation just around that, as well as some rocks just at the base of the house there. I then thought it would be fun to add in a new coaster, which I wasn't planning to originally. This is kind of a last second decision. But I decided the area needed some extra rides and a bit more movement around the place because it only really had 2 rides up until this point. So yeah, basically just created a small out and back mini suspended coaster that kind of goes from one side of the area to the other. And what I was kind of going for here, especially with the laydown vehicles, is kind of a swamp vultures feel. And I actually ended up calling it vultures because I did want to replicate those birds, and I tried to make a few kind of swoopy elements, particularly near the path in places for a bit of a dramatic effect. But yeah, that's kind of what I was going for there. I think it turned out pretty nicely. I did a couple slight layout rejigs just as the playthrough went on, just to ensure that the speed was reasonable throughout the layout, as these vehicles do tend to lose speed quite quickly. Even now with the completed layout, it does kind of go quite slowly in places, especially at the back of the haunted house. But when the guests load the train, it becomes obviously goes a little bit faster, and yeah, it doesn't look too bad. I think it's about as good as I was going to get. I had to slightly move the queue line of the side friction coaster, which I named Creepy Dips. It's intended, of course, to be a bit of a twist on the pre-built ride Creaky Dips, which I thought was quite clever. I then got to work on vegetation and theming in the area, which did take quite a bit of time, mostly jungle shrubs and the dark green regular shrubs. I only used a couple of the taller jungle trees just because I didn't want it to be a jungle exactly. I did want it to have a bit more of a swampy or marsh feel, so I think the lower heights of the shrubs worked well to get that going, I think. But yeah, since most of these little bits of scenery were only quarter tile pieces, it did take quite a bit of time, even in a relatively small area here. But yeah, I think it turned out pretty nicely. For whatever reason in the scenario, I've been kind of neglecting the food and drink options so far, so I added in a pizza stall because I didn't have very much going on, if anything, on this side of the map, so I got that in quickly there. I then also realized that the guest count wasn't really advancing, so I wanted to quickly add some more rides to increase the soft guest cap. So I first added in a couple boat hires. I built one near the park entrance to start with, followed by one out the other side of the map. And I think this worked out well because there wasn't actually a whole lot of stuff going on in these areas of the park. So I think they kind of achieved two things in one there, which was good. And of course, being Gentle Glen, those boat rides with their low intensity ratings were very popular. Even with this increase in the guest cap, I do buy quite a few marketing campaigns just to ensure we do reach that guest count comfortably. Afterwards, I then shove in one more ride on this side of the park in a small mini golf, which turned out to be a lot easier than I thought actually. I basically just raised the land slightly, just at kind of the edge of the park boundary there. Did the station platform, and I decided to keep it simple and just do one of each of the hole styles. And keep in mind that there are only 4 hole types in RCT1. So yeah, just basically just did each hole type and a bit of a path in between. And then just added in some basic scenery pieces, including a few of the smaller ornamental trees, which I think just suit the look of the mini golf quite nicely. Unfortunately, I didn't really have that much space left out here, so I just kind of didn't even put in a queue line. I just hooked up the entrance straight to the path. I actually did that I did the same thing with the mini suspended coaster actually. I probably could have tried a little bit harder to get a queue line in there, but I couldn't really be bothered. As I mentioned earlier, I am charging basically as much as I can for each ride, so I'm having to go back and adjust pricing quite a bit, which was getting a little bit annoying, but definitely worth it, as it means I didn't really have to think about finances too often at all in this playthrough. I do go back and add a few final details, including some of the jungle style fencing to the haunted swamp area, but that area is pretty much polished off now. Just added in a few more of the jungle shrubs and just really try and make the start of that themed area kind of a bit more obvious with the taller jungle trees. It's kind of what I was trying to do anyway. After that, it was then time to fill in the last pocket of space on top of the hill, and I decided to make my life a bit trickier than I needed to by adding in one last coaster. So I ended up going for a Vekoma family boomerang using the steel coaster, which seemed to be getting quite common in real amusement parks these days. It's a pretty tame ride, doesn't do anything too exciting, but does have a couple steep slopes there. Despite this, the stats are quite low, which is no problem at all for Gentle Glen. I think it turned out to be like 3s across the board in excitement and intensity, and I think nausea might have even been like around 2, which is good. I only just managed to fit in a queue line. It was pretty tight for space up there, but we did manage to get in a couple tiles. I wanted to make the reverse incline, the lift hill on the diagonal, just to introduce a few more kind of angles into the park, and just so it kind of fits in between the dodgem cars and the chain lift of Hiccup. And then based on that, I thought the reversing spike would look kind of the best, just parallel to it, which also seems to be kind of common with these sort of rides. So yeah, I think it looked reasonable enough there, and the supports look realistic enough. I think the path doesn't clip away too much of that, which is good. I then basically spend the rest of the playthrough plugging in the last little few areas with decorations and lots of trees and shrubs, especially given that this is meant to be a bit of a forest or woodland theme going on at the top of the hill here. So spent quite a bit of time on that. As usual, I gave myself far too little time to do everything I wanted, so I do pause the game quite a lot in these last stages just to save myself every possible second of building time I can. Also decided to use the wooden reverser coaster to make a bit of an archway entrance to the forest area, which I thought I had a little bit of space there to use, but yeah, just a little tracker texture sort of archway there. I think turned out quite alright. This part of the map also didn't have too much going on, so it was good to get an extra structure of sorts out here. One of those more major pieces of work that I left till the last second was putting in a bit of land underneath the turnaround of the Vekoma family boomerang. I really wanted to get some land underneath those supports, but I definitely was cutting it fine in terms of the scenario timeline, but managed to get it in at the end, which is great. But anyway, that's just about it actually. So the advertising in that last coaster helped me achieve the guest goal quite easily in the end. Also had plenty of money left over as well. I think I've even paid off the loan as well. So yeah, thanks all very much for sticking with me through this playthrough, really appreciate it. I think the next one we're going to tackle is Diamond Heights, which I was planning to do before Gentle Glen, but I think we'll be taking that one on next, and really looking forward to that. I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge, but yeah, it should be fun. Anyway, so I'll leave you with some footage following all the coasters in the park, and yeah, well, that'll be just about it. So thanks again, and hopefully see you in the next video. Cheers, bye.